works going on in the road sector with the 700-kilometer Lagos to Calabar superhighway that's presently under construction, as well as several other interventions in all geopolitical zones of the country. We have currently over 300 federal roadways and bridges that are being reconstructed and rehabilitated and newly constructed under the leadership of this president. And that is made possible by the fact that he has brought sanity to the nation's, kind of fiduciary, architecture. Look, he's not stopping there. He's doing everything possible to go around the world to attract foreign direct investment, not just by selling, a policy kind of by word of mouth, but by tangibly and pragmatically implementing policy and regulatory changes within the country that would incentivize the inflow of foreign exchange and foreign direct investment. We see that manifest in obviously large increases in the rate of tax revenues accruing to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And obviously the international community is paying attention to the fact that there is a tax reform committee working assiduously over the next few months and have been working over the last few months to bring down the aggregate number of taxes in the country from approximately 63 down to what would be single digits at 9. If we can eliminate double taxation, if we can streamline taxation from the federal, state, and local government tiers of administration in the country, you're going to obviously see a situation whereby the private sector, both domestic private sector and the international private sector, are incentivized to come in with their capital. You join that with the changes we've seen within the nation's fiscal and monetary authorities, you'll now know why President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is being hailed by the investment community, not just locally through NASIMA, that's been very open in talking about how the reforms of Mr. President have impacted on the level of investment interest in the economy by indigenous investors and local investors, but also by international companies who've come in and pledged more investments in oil and gas. We have nearly double digits in the billions of dollars in new deep offshore oil investments coming in as a result of the policy reforms enacted by this president. Like I always say, if I take time to detail all of what this president has done in the first year of his administration, no time on this program would be enough.
All right, so I've been talking about reforms in the oil and gas sector, and with a cursory look at the kinds of challenges in the petroleum downstream sector just before the president assumed office, how fundamentals are the steps taken by the president to address the level of criminality in the oil-producing areas? I'm asking this question because I remember one of the biggest challenges met by this administration was a dire lack of investments in the oil and gas sector. How do you think these reforms have increased competitiveness, in the global oil and gas markets?
It's a great question, Jumoke, and I think the proof is in the pudding on this. If you look at where we were, at the inception of this administration, in the early days of this administration, when oil production had dipped down to as low as 1 million barrels per day, 1.1 million barrels per day, and you recognize that we are now pushing with some relative consistency at 1.6 to 1.7 million barrels per day. That is the direct result of the policy and personnel interventions of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the oil sector. Look, you also have to point out that the National Security Advisor in the person of Malam Nuhu Ribadu has obviously done a fantastic job in the coordination of security agencies to ensure that we're able to more effectively clamp down on some of these adverse activities of some of these actors within the Niger Delta. But there is more work to do. Our plans are to push oil production over 2 million barrels per day. So we're not where we want to be yet. But anyone suggesting that there has not been absolutely significant progress recorded in the fight against oil theft and ultimately in our ability to ramp up production of crude, I think would not be fair to the truth. But look, I would also say that it goes beyond the issue of crude oil theft when you're talking about the incentivization of further investment in the oil and gas industry. You also are dealing with the extent to which we're investing in the critical infrastructure. And this is why when His Excellency Mr. President, over the course of just the last month or so, inaugurated 3 new gas handling and processing facilities to ensure that we can monetize to the great extent possible our gas resources, that we're not simply just, kind of taking the crude gas that we're extracting and selling it in that form, which obviously does not allow you to maximize the value on kind of the return on what you can obviously attract if you're able to simply process it, refine it, add value to it, so that whether you are selling it in the local market, which is what we are pushing very hard to do, or whether you're exporting that processed gas, you're making the most money for the resource that you're producing. So this is the way to go. If you look at the pipeline infrastructure, you'd recognize that we've obviously gone to conclusive stages on the OB3 pipeline. That's obviously going to have a major impact on our ability, to transmit our resources, from industry to industry in the country in a way that would obviously create more investment attraction with respect to oil, gas production. Because if you're producing the gas and you're not able to effectively transmit it, then anyone that you're trying to get to come in to produce the gas will say, well, look, what good is stranded gas? So these are some of the interventions that Mr. President is aggressively making, which will ultimately have a large impact on the future of the Nigerian economy. But look, we also want to be clear. We are not just simply focused on the oil and gas sector. The president is diversifying quickly out of that. He's investing massively in agriculture mechanization, making sure that we can enhance our yields by not just supplying the highest quality of seeds to farmers all across our nation, but also ensuring that we are bringing in the technology, the agricultural mechanical instrumentation required to really ease the kind of the more antiquated the reliance on antiquated labor practices and farming practices by our farmers, so that they can maximize their yields and get the best out of the high quality seedlings that are being provided to them across the various value chains in the food production industry. So if you look at that and you recognize that even within the President's Renewed Hope Infrastructure Development Fund, which really for the first time we have an infrastructure development fund that's not just focused on roads and bridges, which are very important, and airports and seaports, which are also very important, but is also focused on the critical infrastructure within the agricultural sector that will make a difference to the wealth of the nation and our ability to ultimately enhance food security. If you're talking about cold chain infrastructure, the ability to ensure that the current situation, let me just land on this, the current situation where you have almost 50% of production across our farmlands being spoiled before they get to the market because there's no refrigeration in our rural hamlets and farms. These are things that we can now quickly change by providing the infrastructure for example, solar powered, cold chain infrastructure within these rural communities. This is really the future of the economy that the president is currently creating.
All right, then. You've been appointed as the special envoy on climate action. Congratulations on that. But you're also the official spokesperson of the president. How do you combine these big roles?
Well, look, we have been from the beginning of our stewardship under the leadership and guidance and mentorship of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We've been very committed to the idea that we have to strengthen the institution, right? And how does that tie into the answer to your question? I fully understood that whether I'm a spokesman or not a spokesman, I will eventually leave this position, whether it's tomorrow morning, whether it's in 2027, or whether it's in 2031. Certainly, I know Mr. President's coming back for a second term because of his performance, but I don't know if the President has it in mind for me to be a spokesman in the second term. That's up to him. What I do know is that whether I leave tomorrow morning or in 2031 or whenever I leave this office, there needed to be a cultivation of institutional talent. That is the bureaucracy, information officers, making sure that whoever is on the seat as SA Media today or tomorrow, that we've cultivated the talent and we've trained them at a world-class level to be able to deliver on the skill sets required to ensure that no matter who's there, the media office is running and running well, whether it has to do with scripting, whether it has to do with anchoring and moderating events, whatever aspect of the job that would require a bureaucrat to step in, a civil servant to step in for a political appointee in the media office of the president, we've prepared them. Now, how that ties in is because we have done that work over the last 8 months preparing our staff for, enhanced responsibility, more delegation of responsibility to them. I am fortunate to now be in a position where I can, delegate very trustfully in very talented staff that have been cultivated over the course of the last 8 or 9 months. So I'm now in a position to delegate more responsibility to them, but certainly my eye will remain on the ball. I will still be very hands-on, but I have a staff that I can trust in. And on the climate side, I've been very fortunate to have the trust of His Excellency, Mr. President, to really, take a look at some of the best hands that Nigeria has to offer, both from locally and around the world, with respect to the expertise in renewable energy technologies, with expertise in carbon capture, technologies, with respect to, EV production and all of the other areas that have to do with the sector that I am now overseeing as the special presidential envoy on climate action. And look, we have already, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, over the course of the last several years, has done so much work already on the energy transition. We have a Nigeria Energy Transition Plan 2060, which essentially guides our steps all the way to net zero emissions by 2060. What we are now doing is ensuring that we reposition our institutions in a way that, in an unprecedented fashion, we enhance transparency so that the billions of dollars, and I want to be specific about what we're talking about. We presently have a shortfall of about $17+ billion annually of the needed climate-related financing that is required for us to be able to meet our carbon neutrality and net zero emissions target for 2060. If we don't raise this kind of money on an annual basis for investments in the relevant subsectors of the climate action sector, then we're not going to get there. And the way that you raise that kind of money is generating the kind of confidence that we have not been able to generate simply because we have not had strong institutions and credible leaders within the institutions and parastatals that are directly in charge and involved in raising this finance. So I want to, just if I may, yes.
All right, so for a proper perspective, what are the president's plans for the climate and how does that interface with economic development?
It's an important question. Unfortunately, I was just about to go there. So it's one thing to recognize that we have a series of challenges with respect to desertification, deforestation, and the need to engage in large-scale reforestation, tree planting, so that we can enhance the nation's carbon sink, which is carbon capture effectively, through our tree planting program and ecosystem. But it's another thing entirely to recognize that we have to deal with both sides of how did we get to this point, ensuring that there is justice done on those illicit actors, some from the Far East, some indigenous actors who are colluding, for example, to cut down a lot of our timber and essentially take them out of the country illicitly to produce goods in other countries. The same way that they're doing with our solid minerals. If we have to, first of all, clamp down on activity like that, but at the same time we're doing that, we have to ensure that we have built an architecture that supports the large-scale recruitment of young people engaging in tree planting all across the length and breadth of our country. That's one side of it. Another side of it is ensuring that our institutions are positioned to be made totally digital with respect to their procurement processes. I want to be clear about some of the challenges we've had. We have been operating a system in which a climate-related donor will bring millions of dollars or pounds or other forms of foreign exchange denominated currency, right? And essentially what would happen is the head of a bureaucracy will sit down, whoever that might be, and they'll essentially be calling politicians to say, look, I want you to bring this consultant, bring your briefcase NGO, we're going to give you this grant, and ultimately nothing is getting done. Or if something's getting done, it's not nearly what should be getting done. Now, what ultimately ends up happening over the medium to long term is the donors that are linked to these foreign embassies within our country and linked to foreign governments are now looking and saying, hold on a second, we've invested, tens of millions of dollars and pounds in the Nigerian climate action sphere, and we're not seeing the results. So why would we want to ramp that up? Why would we even want to continue what we're already doing? So now, in order to change that, we're going to have to digitize our procurement processes, and we're going to have to basically open up in real time a system that is basically going to run on the idea that if you have a donor coming in, let's just say for the sake of, example, we have $1 million coming in from a particular donor. We have to be able to say that this $1 million will be used to achieve a particular result that will be measured. We should be able to show Nigerians through a website or through other digital means who it is, what consultant is taking that grant, what the deliverables on that particular consultancy will yield, and then real-time progress reports as to what extent that consultant has been able to deliver on those deliverables that have been agreed in real time, not after the fact. We also have to look at how we're going to embed officials from the EFCC and the ICPC in any department or unit that is related to any fiduciary activity within the organizations we're talking about. What I've committed to the president is that under my watch, there will be zero tolerance for corruption. This is not a typical Nigerian politician talk where we say, oh, there will be no corruption and people are stealing money. We're talking about systems that will ensure that it's not based on the word of a special envoy, based on the word of a DG. It is based on a real-time monitoring and evaluation and tracking process that is digitized and that is open. Anybody coming for consultancy now for these grants and funds that are related to the development of all of our initiatives under the climate action umbrella, they will know that they're coming in to a total open accountability system. If they're not comfortable with it, they will have to take their fraud to some other sector, but it won't be mine, and it won't be the climate action sector. We are determined to ensure that, first of all, aside from kind of bringing transparency so that you can raise the rate of fundraising required to be able to fund the level of development that we are seeking within the climate action sector, we are equally saying, look, we have to drive processes. We have to drive a strategy that is investor driven. What does that mean? We are no longer telling, donors and multilaterals to simply come and put money in a basket and trust that the Nigerian government and Nigerian government officials will just do the right thing. We're no longer telling them that. What we are now saying is we are only interested in mutually beneficial win-win investment arrangements. These are investments. We want you to bring your capital. If you're a multilateral now, like a DFI, a development finance institution, or a World Bank or an African Development Bank, we want you to pool your billions of dollars together to say, look, this is a pool of de-risking finance, so that the solar panel manufacturer somewhere in Virginia in the United States or somewhere in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, right, that wants to come in and establish a solar panel manufacturing facility in Nigeria, they know that there's de-risking finance available in case there's any type of shortcoming or unforeseen event that puts their investment at risk, so that they have confidence to bring that investment and bring those jobs and bring those industries and factories into the country for the benefit of the Nigerian economy and ultimately for the benefit of what we want to do in terms of climate action. So we are telling our partners globally, we're no longer in the business of asking you to come and dump $1 billion in a Nigerian bureaucracy so that we can steal half and then do whatever we want to do with the rest of it. No. Don't trust us. That's not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is for you to bring mutually beneficial investment that will drive job creation, that will drive tax tax revenue generation, and they will drive our ability to diversify into clean and renewable energy technology sources that are manufactured in the country. And this is why we have to give credit to the vision and commitment and leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to say, look, we're no longer going to do business as usual. We want to create a green industrial hub for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that is exactly what he's committed to. And he has trusted me and given me his confidence that I will deliver on that task. And I will not fail the president, and I will not fail this country.
Right, absolutely reassuring. But we've also heard about plans for a green industrial zone established by the president. What can you tell us about that? And also how the president is tackling these barriers.
So this is very critical because, you know, what we have done over time, and it's always been, I think, a product of, I would call it administrative lethargy, or you could say administrative myopia, is that we have always been comfortable with a status quo in which multilateral institutions like the World Bank, etc., very helpfully produce $2 or $3 billion, for example, right, to invest in the provision of solar panels to low income and disadvantaged communities in rural Nigeria, right? Usually sent through a rural electrification agency. Now, we know, if we're being open and honest, what the history of the Rural Electrification Agency has been with respect to, procurement fraud and diversion of public resources that should have gone to the supply and provision of some of these renewable energy technologies for the benefit of disadvantaged Nigerians across the country. That doesn't mean they haven't done any work, but it certainly does mean that the impact that could have been had over the last 20 years, we're not seeing barely a percentage of what we should be seeing. So what has happened is that these funds are essentially sent from the World Bank and DFIs in the West and in other parts of the world to China, right? China takes that money effectively because they are owning over 85-90% of the global market share of solar panel production, for example. So they end up making the money because they're the manufacturer of the solar panels that ultimately are being, imported by countries like Nigeria and other countries across the across the African continent through these World Bank funded programs. And I know I mentioned the World Bank; they're not the only one. There are several other DFIs that are essentially paying China to export solar panels to Africa at a time when African countries like Nigeria are most populous, the largest market, the largest democracy, the largest economy, does not have jobs for its youths. We're importing these things from China. So what the president is saying, look, enough is enough. We're not doing business as usual. What we're going to do now is we're going to locally manufacture these solar panels that are going to be distributed across the Federal Republic of Nigeria so that we can create millions of jobs. We can create billions of dollars in new tax revenue annually, and ultimately we can create an ecosystem in which we can satisfy our national demand for renewable energy in rural communities as well as urban settlements as well, while we also are now in a position to satisfy that demand and ultimately be a net exporter of renewable energy technologies to the rest of the continent. That is the vision of the president. It has never happened in the history of Africa. Never. So what this zone represents, the zone is called Evergreen City. And how it works is essentially it's going to be a free zone that is nuanced in the sense that it is going to run on renewable energy. So it's going to be running on solar power plants, large scale solar power plants. It's going to be running on wind turbines, wind farms that are going to be generating the power that the industries that are housed in that zone will use to be able to manufacture. Now, the final leg is that we are saying to the industries that are coming into this green industrial zone that this is not for everybody. It is for industries that are specifically functioned to manufacture renewable energy technologies. So you're using renewable energy to essentially power industries that will be producing and manufacturing renewable energy technologies for onward deployment to the rest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the rest of the West African sub-region and eventually the rest of the African continent, to the massive benefit of Nigerian workers, the Nigerian economy, and Nigerian soft power across the continent and the world. And the point that we're making is that at a time when there is extensive geopolitical competition between some of these major forces, it only makes sense to be able to diversify the manufacturing base of some of these renewable energy technologies. And that is the case we're making, and we're making good headway.
Absolutely beautiful to hear you say all of this. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation. You're watching Politics Tonight, everyone. We'll take a break, and I'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
At TVC News, we follow the big and major news, gathering the facts, witnessing the outcome.
I am here live at the aftermath of the approval of the new national minimum wage.
We are TV Station of the Year, not just for breaking news, but for being first, fair and accurate. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. I've been speaking with Nigerian Galali, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. He's also Special Envoy on Climate Action. Tonight, we're assessing President Tinubu's epic first year and his plans for the climate. Mr. Galali, thank you so much for staying with us on the program. So there are so many aspects. I mean, you would agree with me that there are so many aspects to the role of Special Envoy. What should Nigerians know about this role and how it functions within Nigeria's existing governance architecture?
Thank you very much, Jumoke. You know, the strategic nature of the role is that it is really a coordination hub of all federal MDAs and subnational, agencies and bureaucracies that deal specifically with those sectors that feed into the climate action ecosystem in a way that allows us to monitor how effectively the various kind of components of the climate action ecosystem are able to key into our ability to reach an end goal that we've agreed on. So there's a vision. We have a roadmap, and we say, okay, if it's the localization of value chains, I just talked a little bit about Evergreen City at the Green Industrial Hub, which is all about, localizing value chains, making sure that the solar panels we're deploying across the country are not simply imported or shipped in, but that they're produced locally so that the Nigerian economy and the Nigerian people benefit maximally from that process. But we're also talking about other aspects. We're talking about the fact that the president is doubling down with, the Honorable Minister of Solid Minerals Development and the person of Dr. Dele Alake on, the processing of our solid minerals. And some of these have to do directly with climate action. So when we're talking about, for example, a $200 million lithium processing facility that just commenced operations, I believe, last month in Nasarawa State, which was launched by the representation of His Excellency Mr. President. And the delegation even went to visit Mr. President in his office as well, where they pledged to invest more in such activities. When you have, the local processing, right? What that now allows you to do is now you're in the game potentially for, the manufacturing of electric vehicle batteries, right? Of which lithium is a major component. So now we recognize that When you are able to localize as much of the end-to-end production of items that the largest market in Africa, which is ours, consume, you're really creating wealth, but you're doing it in a way that is eco-friendly, and you're doing it in a way that positions Nigeria to have the credibility when we sit at the table to be able to bring our brother and sister African nations to say, look, this is the continental view. This is our position. We have to have consensus on these issues, and we have to agree that we're no longer going to be the dumping ground for whether it's Western manufacturing or Eastern manufacturing or any other kind of manufacturing. So this is the view. Now, with that said, I think there are a few elements in things like in sectors like obviously environment. Everybody thinks of environment. You're dealing with, multifarious issues around environmental regulations, which is domiciled in the Ministry of Environment. That has nothing to do with me. But it does feed into the ecosystem that I'm going to now need to coordinate, right? So when you're talking about, deforestation, for example, and desertification and how we combat that, these are all things that while different ministries, departments, and agencies handle these things specifically, right, within their own ministerial, administrative mandates, my job is essentially to say, look, okay, where are you at with this? What have you achieved with this? What more support do you need from this, whether it's locally or internationally, to be able to meet, the benchmark we've set, to be able to be on target and on course, to meet our 10, 15-year, 20-year, development goals on these issues, our nationally determined contributions on these issues. When you're starting to now talk about, pushing toward carbon neutrality, that's another subsector, right? Where now you're dealing with the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources on gas and other stakeholders. There are several different elements to this. In some cases, if you're talking about EV batteries and eventually EV vehicle manufacturing, or at least assembly in phase one and then eventually manufacturing, now you're dealing with coordinating the NADDC, for example, right? And you're working with the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, for example. So what it is in effect is it is a coordinator of all of the relevant MDAs at the federal and subnational levels that deal and feed in to the larger climate action ecosystem of the nation. Then that's the domestic side of the job. The international side of the job is to be the lead negotiator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on all of the issues affecting the nation with respect to globally agreed commitments on things like methane reduction, on things like CO2 emission reduction, on things like, our ability to, create a carbon sink that can effectively offtake some of the emissions from, some of our high polluting or heavily polluting industries.
All right.
So you're essentially the lead negotiator and lead diplomat on climate issues.
All right, let me ask you this, and I want us to be realistic. Is net zero emissions a realistic target? And is Nigeria on course to meet this ambitious target? Is it realistic?
Jumoke, I am someone who prioritizes, and anyone who works under the mentorship and tutelage of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu would prioritize pragmatism and practicality. So everything I've said on this program, none of it is pie in the sky. Everything is based on a tangible and verifiable set of steps that we are going to take step by step by step, without rushing and with due diligence until we reach our targets. That's point number one. Point number two is, if you're asking whether the pathway to net zero by 2060 is realistic, I will say yes, and I will say it emphatically. Now, I will also say that it is not just going to happen because we want it to happen. And it's not just going to happen because we wave a magic wand and pretend that we'll just get there. It's going to happen because there is a political and developmental consensus in our country across the federal and subnational entities of government that says, look, we can agree that this is the way to go. And we're not doing this because we want Washington, D.C. or London or Abu Dhabi to clap for us. That's not why we're doing these things. We're doing these things because, first of all, we do care about the future of our children and grandchildren. We have no doubt about the impact of climate change. We know it's real. We see it all around us. So what are we going to do about it? What we are saying, though, is that while all of that is true, we are driving this with an economic and an investment focus. We are saying that the pathway to net zero is via mutually beneficial win-win investments. That is how we will get there. You see, one of the ways in which development process in our country has long been skewed and undermined by public officials who know they're only there for a short period of time, so they extract whatever they can from the system, hopefully hoping that eventually they can, retire on whatever they've been able to extract in a short period of time. What we are saying is that differently, if we focus it on investments, if we're focused on driving investment, then what we've now done is the incentive or the ability of a public actor, a political figure or a public official to be able to get their hands involved in a way that will stop us from meeting our targets. It's totally undermined when it is driven by the private sector, whose sole motive is the profit motive. They want to make money. So what we are saying is that anyone who wants to come into the country, manufacture the kinds of technologies that will enhance the carbon sink of the country. We're talking about carbon capture technologies in the country. We're talking about renewable energy technologies so that we can move away from this reliance on those heavily polluting, high emission, forms of energy production. This is how you get to net zero, but you're doing it in a way that is predicated on mutually beneficial investments from the private sector. The private sector is constant. They're not interested in whether it's PDP, APC, Labour Party, or some other party that we don't know about that may come up 20 years from now. What they're concerned about is I have invested this money, right, on the ground in Nigeria. I'm making good profit, right? And I'm producing those things, those renewable energy technologies that is moving this country where my investment is away from heavily polluting, energy production forms, diesel power generation, for example, in some cases, natural gas power generation, for example. This is the kind of transition that we can run and drive through the private sector. Now, our job today is making sure that we create the climate, the investment and environmental and regulatory and legal compliance frameworks that would ensure that the de-risking finance is available, right? And then the confidence of the investors, because they have the de-risking finance, because the federal and subnational entities of public administration in the country have agreed on a consensus approach to what needs to be done to attract those investments, they are now ready to bring their money. It's not rocket science. All you have to do is be able to have a focus, drive it day by day diligently, and put yourself in a position, be somebody who simply is not looking for a briefcase. If you're not distracted by what you can extract from the system on a day-to-day basis, right, looking at the next election or looking at one thing or the other or retirement, then you're able to just look at the system, build a system that works to achieve the strategy you've set out. We're focused on getting these investments. That's all we're going to be doing over the course of the next several years. Whether I'm in this position as special envoy until 2027, tomorrow morning, or 2031, I don't know. But for as long as His Excellency Mr. President gives me this opportunity, I'm going to do everything within the fiber of my being to ensure that we put the systems in place that will outlive us and that will position the private sector to drive the investment base we need to truly take us to net zero, not by public expenditure, but by public innovative public regulatory reform and environmental conditioning.
Right. And we wish you the very best on that. But finally on this, is Mr. President's green industrial push a threat to his oil and gas plans?
Oh, absolutely not. Look, the president is very clear that the oil and gas sectors provide a base of wealth that we can use to, at least at these initial stages, finance a lot of our transition activities. Yes, we're talking about the need to bring in, for example, foreign direct investment and how to incentivize, manufacturers to come into the country to manufacture the kind of renewable energy technologies that will enable us to actually meet our net zero targets. But on the other hand, it's also important to note that, nobody just comes into a place that is unprepared, right? You still have to make those investments in the integrated link infrastructure that makes an investment in a solar panel production facility worthwhile. If you don't have roads linking the country together, right? Interstate highway systems that actually work, or interstate rail systems that can carry some of these renewable energy, products from one end of the country to the next, right? Or to ports to be able to ship out to the rest of the continent and the world, then obviously the investments you're going to try and drive are not going to be viable. But that's not going to come from the moon. That's going to come from the resources available to the country today. And what are those resources? Those resources are derivable from the income we make from oil and gas production and processing in the country and refinement. So we're going to use that fund to be able to provide the superstructure, the base infrastructural foundation that's required to be able to say to our investors that are coming from Europe and coming from the U.S. and coming from China and coming from India and other parts of the world, to say, look, you can bring your money because the superstructure is here. You have good roads, you have good railways, there's security, you have the amenities. We have, of course, the president's investments in the Presidential Power Initiative, which is another major component of his one-year anniversary achievement. The fact that we are finally implementing properly and effectively the Presidential Power Initiative in partnership with Siemens Energy. We're seeing gradually, if not for some of these strike actions in recent times, we're seeing a relative stability in the quality of the frequency. We still have challenges with respect to the consistency of our generation in the country for a number of reasons. But when it comes to the actual frequency, the current that's entering homes and businesses, gradually, as these Siemens substations are coming into the country, which we're unveiling in front of the public, everybody knows they're coming in. It's verifiable. Because we're implementing the PPI the right way, we're now in a position to, again, create that superstructure over time as the president continues to diligently just work this, this program of development out step by step. We'll be able to bring at least some base minimum of power generation, transmission, and distribution to the country so that superstructure is there for the investors, both in climate action and renewable energy technologies and other subsectors, to be able to come in and come in confidently. This is the vision of the president. And we're determined to carry it out. But what I can tell you, and I can say this authoritatively from the position of someone who is directly involved in these negotiations, our partners around the world believe in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not just because of the fact that he's president today, but because of the fact that he was the executive governor of Lagos State, and they know what he achieved. They know what he did. His record is there. Right? Princeton even did a case study on his governance architecture within Lagos State during that time. Anybody can Google that. So they know who he is and what he represents. What we're doing now is to say to the international community that, look, we're ready to take this thing to a level that none of you have ever seen before. We're ready to do things that have never been attempted in the history of the African continent. But it's going to require your partnership. We're not looking for your sympathy. We're not looking for your charity or your donation. We don't want. What we want is mutually beneficial investments and partnerships. And that is what we are positioning the country to be the most appropriate and the most suitable, landing spot, in relation to some of these partners we have around the world. They're interested. We just have to create that ecosystem, and they know that they're dealing with a president and an administration that is providing that ecosystem. It might be hard today. The reforms are difficult. It feels tough. It's painful, right? And we all know it is. There's no running away from that. But it is the pain is part of the process. China went through it. India went through it. I'm a historian. Anybody who knows their history knows these countries and their populations went through these phases. But look at where they are today. We're in this phase now. We're going through it. It's painful. We're going to get to that place tomorrow. But we need our people to keep faith with us, to support us, and to ensure that they're keying in as much as possible to the developmental opportunities and programs that we're providing, whether it's consumer credit, whether it is a student loan program, whether it is MSME capitalization and grants and loans. We need our people to key into the opportunities available so that we can all rise together.
All right. I mean, from our conversation tonight, this is a huge vision, this is a huge plans for Nigeria, and I sincerely wish you the best from here. But, I mean, we have a few minutes to wrap up, so let's talk about organized labor. The meeting of the Tripartite Committee on Minimum Wage has resumed, with all parties aiming to reach an agreement on a sustainable minimum wage for Nigerian workers. The president has committed to a minimum wage above 60,000 naira and has also directed the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, to present the cost implication for a new minimum wage within 2 days. What's the implication of this?
Well, it just shows the alacrity with which the president is moving on this issue. He is determined to get the very best deal possible for Nigerians. But he doesn't want to play to a gallery and cripple the people, of this country in the process. And what do I mean by that? I was on a program recently where I articulated the fact that organized labor as it is now is demanding a 20 times increase in the national minimum wage. This is the national minimum wage that will apply to private businesses as much as it will apply to federal and subnational governments, right? Meaning that if you are a small bakery or a small, tailor, or you have a little tailor shop, or you're a private school proprietor, that's even a little bit on a larger scale, for example. If you have to pay 20 times the salary to your janitor, to your cook, to your staff, to your drivers, to your security men, right? What that is going to lead to, expectedly and predictably, right? If it's not the actual closure of that enterprise, it is going to lead to a mass retrenchment. People will be sacked en masse, right? And the only way to avoid that is to, if you're a private school proprietor, to jack up the tuition on the students and on Nigerian families across the country, whoever is involved with that school or patronizing it, by 10, 15 times to accommodate the rise in minimum wage. These are obvious things. It's obvious, right, that this is the outcome. It's going to cripple Nigerian families. You're talking about school fees that are going to exponentially increase. You're talking about food prices that will exponentially increase. You're talking about almost every good and service that you can think of exponentially increasing in the name of a 20 times increase. We know that it's not workable. We know it's not feasible. Nigerians do too. But it's also true that our people do deserve a better deal. They do deserve better than 30,000 naira a month minimum wage. Of course they do. And the president believes so too, which is why the president has said, look, 60,000 isn't enough. We have to go higher than that. But when we go higher than that, we have to be mindful of what effect this is going to have on the Nigerian families that we are currently negotiating to better support. Right? If you're giving a Nigerian worker, for example, a threefold increase, or a fourfold increase in his salary, but you have a multiple-fold increase in the goods of services around him, he or she might end up worse off because it obviously is getting swallowed up by inflation and by the increased price of goods and services around the country. So the president is asking for pragmatism and fairness, not for government, not to save government's revenues, but for the people of the country and to protect their medium to long-term interest, even as we do the right thing by increasing the national minimum wage.
I mean, above all, we really hope the Tripartite Committee comes up with a final agreement and ultimately makes Nigerian workers happy. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. During Galali, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, is also Special Envoy on Climate Change. Thank you so much for speaking with us on the President's first epic year in office and his plans for the climate. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatoji. Good night, everyone.
Morning, Marina Station and all the passengers. efficient, it's comfortable.
This development will go a long way in reducing congestion and emission.
The trains are a long-term solution to Lagos traffic challenges.
This is where we take the final, decisions on policies, programs of government. I will have to ensure that, the narration of Lagos as a PLC is taken very, very seriously.
This is a major pedestrian bridge linking Oyingo here to Apapa Road over there.
With this overpass, we are providing what we call a permanent solution.
This place is one of the most dangerous areas at the biosecurity environment.
This can go into the news and every crumbs of your neighborhood.
Our goal is to remain as Africa's model megacity, to move our GDP from the 5-6 position to the 3rd position, and we believe it's achievable with all the commitments we have.
Explore the city of Lagos, where dreams are made and possibilities are endless.
With Betano and get a welcome bonus up to 200,000 naira. Betano, the official sponsor of UEFA Euro 2024.
Bye, Mom.
He's going to play in this weather? Why did you let him go? He might fall ill.
And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, we use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with germ defense gives you protection. Rainy season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw ether material slabbed, stroked, and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty, erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
When Nigeria's unity was at stake after a devastating civil war, the National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) was formed in 1973 to foster national cohesion. More than 50 years after, the scheme continues to serve the purpose through mobilization of Nigerian graduates below the age of 30 for the one-year compulsory national service. Watch NYSC Hack Hour, a weekly program showcasing activities of the scheme and exploits of Youth Corps members nationwide. On TVC News every Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
Soon coming.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
After 2 months of repairs, the Lekki Conservation Centre is back and bustling with life. Home to a diverse array of plants and animals, this Lagos heritage site plays a vital role in preserving the region's ecosystem. And let's not forget about the star attraction, the longest canopy walkway in Africa, offering the breathtaking 360-degree views from above the treetops. This and more will be our focus in this week's edition of Green Angle. Welcome.
Yes,
I am Esther Makwariola.